Hey everybody, this is Caleb, part of the Narrate team. Today, Adam talks about what makes Narrate tick. At Narrate, we want to be the type of a church that create experiences for people that are engaging and challenging no matter where you are at on your spiritual journey. To be that type of a church, it takes people to pre-decide that they are going to serve at Narrate in a variety of different areas. Today, Adam is calling all owners.
Top of the morning. How are you? Is it not fantastic to have Chris back up here? Those of you that are regulars, to have the 80s butt rocker back in. Raise your hand if you could grow sideburns like that. Exactly, Raji. Like you could do it tomorrow, right? Like boom. Yeah, exactly. So you should. Anybody who can grow sideburns like that should. So there's this guy Tim. Well, his name's not really Tim, but it would be inappropriate for me to tell you his name because then you would never tell me any more stories because you would know that I would tell your story from this stage. So it's also going to be a really difficult story to tell if we don't give him a name because there's friends of friends of friends. So what do you say we call him Tim? Does that work? Okay, so there's this guy Tim. And just a little bit of context about Tim and who he is. He's a 30-something Helena guy, real neat guy, Christ-following guy, real involved with a local church, but not Narrate, a great local church. Have a lot of respect for that place. He recently, this last spring, I think he was coming home. I'm not entirely sure, but his neighbor, who he knew well enough, apparently, for his neighbor to know that he's a church guy. And I don't exactly know how his friend classified him, church guy, Christian, jerk. I'm not really sure how he categorized him, but he apparently had enough respect for him that he looked at Tim and said, hey, Tim, next time you go to church, could I go with you? Now, a little bit of context still. Tim's familiar with this place. He attends here once a month or so. He listens to our podcasts when they're good, every 6 months or so. He's fans of ours. He has a lot of respect for us. He's just really plugged in where he's at, which is great. He was telling Caleb this story this last spring, though, and when his friend said to him, hey, will you take me to church with you, like next time you go? Tim said he thought, yeah. And he said, yeah, I'll take you to church. And then he said, but I'm going to, in his head, he said, but I think I'll take him to Narrate. And what he processed in his head is he said, I'm going to take him to Narrate because I know that he'll be engaged and he'll enjoy the experience. Now, again, I hope you know that this isn't about us proving ourselves superior. We recognize that we serve a unique group of people, and I honestly, sincerely have a lot of respect for that place. But that also is a tremendous story. In fact, the next weekend, Tim did bring his friend with him. And it gets even better. The weekend after that, Tim's friend came back to church, and when he came back, he brought with him a friend. See why he needed a name? Because we're like 3 friends deep now. And it's my understanding that I haven't had the chance to meet them yet, and maybe you're here, but it's my understanding that they've been a part of our community ever since. Now, I tell you that story because some of you've been pouring in here for months, some of you for years, some of you all the way back to 2009, and I hope that there's a sense of satisfaction that comes from that because, that's the win for us. In many ways, that's at least one of the wins. And if you're someone that's a guest or you're someone that's like, hey, I heard this is kind of a big weekend, this might be the perfect weekend to understand Narrate and what makes them tick, I think you're right. And I think that story really grabs a large percentage of it. Because around here, we worked really hard this last spring as a staff and a team, even went off to spent some time together in Atlanta and were provoked to think in some ways. And we've worked hard to define the win. And so as business-like as it sounds, I just thought that might be helpful for you to just understand the way the leadership of this place thinks. In our head, it's a win when someone who's disengaged, disillusioned, disinterested in Jesus comes to faith and expresses that through baptism. I mean, obviously, right? That's so much of what Jesus talks to us about is being people who share the good news of his death and resurrection and the implication that brings to our everyday lives. And so it's a win when someone actually comes to faith. And we respect that people do that in lots of different ways. It comes from lots of different angles, but the center of it all is always an acknowledgement that we're broken, that our sin is offensive to God, that God has dealt with that. In some ways we understand, and many we don't, through the cross and the blood of Jesus. And we think that the historical rite of baptism isn't archaic and therefore should be left behind, but more and more what we've been wrestling with is we need to celebrate that more. Not that anything happens when you get baptized, in our opinion, but that it's an expression of something that's happened and something that's historically important. So for us, it's a huge win when that happens. And in fact, we're going to talk a lot about wins like that this week and then on Vision Weekend a couple of weeks from now. It's also a win in our mind when we matter. You'll hear us say, we're not saying it this weekend just because we're saying it for the whole message, but we want to matter. We feel like the church should be the kind of place that should it cease to exist. The most ardent critics in the community of Jesus should go, bummer, sure hate Christians, but man, people don't have any firewood anymore. We think that the church should exist for the benefit of its non-members. And so for us, it's a win when you're being a part of a weekend gathering here, a weekend experience, a Sunday experience, causes you to go to work and hear a need and actually meet that need. We think that it's a win when you matter to a coworker by helping them move. We think it's a win when we help you help a coworker move. We think it's a win when we split 100 cords of firewood throughout a year and distribute it to people who need help, financial assistance heating their homes. We think it's a win when we raise 20 grand over a few years to build a trail by selling ales, which is messy, but we think it's a win. The third thing for us that's the win, and really it's where we're going to bear down this morning, is we think it's a win when someone, again, who is otherwise disinterested, disengaged, disconnected from Jesus, comes to a Sunday experience, actually enjoys themselves, leaves challenged, and then comes back. Because listen, we're not naive. We recognize that for most of us, all of us, one of the last things we ever want to do is sit in a row on Sunday morning and listen to some dude talk. And so we take seriously the challenge that we have to create experiences that turn all that around, that people want to be a part of, that they leave challenged and engaged by. And that's not just what happens here. That's everything from what happens the moment you hit the front door to what your kids experience, to the coffee and all of that. See, we're a church that talks a lot about gathering and scattering. And this morning, we're going to talk a lot about the gathering. Because you see, every Sunday at about 5:30 in the morning, a whole bunch of alarm clocks go off. And you might ask, who in the world has an alarm clock go off at 5:30 in the morning? They must be one of those poor souls that doesn't have the weekend off. No? Okay, so they must be one of those people that are going fishing, they're going skiing, they're going backpacking, they're going to do something fun. They want to beat all those other city people to the mountain. Nope. They must, dialysis? I mean, what else do you get up at 5:30 in the morning, right? They are people who have pre-decided to take 20, 25 Sundays a year and help create experiences here. See, there are people who are part of our kids team and our guest services team and our band and our tech team, and they've pre-decided that they're going to be to the Grand Street at 7 o'clock in the morning a couple times a month, in some case one, in some case a few. See, because when the kids setup team gets here at 7 o'clock in the morning, they walk into a space, both in the basement here and across the parking lot, that is community theater space. And thus it's not set up to create experiences for kids at church. It's dirty, and that's not a shot at them. It's because there's, on any given Sunday, when we do church here, there's oftentimes 1,000 people through this building just on a Sunday if we have gatherings and they have a show. So it's well used. And so they walk into a space down there that has garbage is spilling over, and the floor is messy, and it stinks, and lots of things going on. And these members of the setup team got out of bed at 5:30. Mind you, they'll have to do that tomorrow to go to work. See, because part of the deal here is this. This morning I want to talk about, like, how do we do this? How do we create these experiences? And the fact is, lots of people work really hard, and by that I don't mean the staff. I have a lot of respect for every person on the staff. Sarah and Caleb and Bridget and now Kate, they're a lot of things. But most notably, they're people who love to work, and they love to work hard. But the reality of it is, they'll be the first to tell you that to create experiences like people like Tim and Tim's friend's friend enjoy, it takes way more than them. It takes people who already have a day job. It takes people who already have things to do. And so these kids, or these people walk into the Narrate kids area, and they sweep, they mop, they empty garbages, they roll out carpets, they get out toys, they set up dividers, they set up a sound system for the kids' large group teaching experience, they set up a monitor, they set out diapers and goldfish crackers and rocking chairs for the mothers, and they set up the mother's viewing room downstairs. They do all this stuff. One of my favorite, for me, honestly, one of the most worshipful things is every once in a while I'll walk downstairs during the setup, and there's these two guys in particular. There's a few of them, but these two that have been doing it for a long time, setting up the kids' area. And I mean, like, these are guys who on Monday, they're a big deal. One of them's big in the banking world. Another one's big in the architecture world. And yet I'll walk down there, and if I catch them on the right week, it happens, I think, a couple times a month, they're sitting on a carpet with, like, some kind of Lysol rag in their hand, and they're scrubbing dolls and Lego blocks and toys. Because the kids department has made a decision that we don't want our kids area to have a whole bunch of skanky, gross, crusty toys. Like, we want them to be clean. And so they're scrubbing toys. At 7 o'clock in the morning, the members of the guest services team walk in the door, and they're here to do many of those same things, to pick up popcorn kernels and to move the lobby around and create space there and to start the coffee pots brewing, because it turns out you all like your coffee, which is good. They're sweeping. They're going into the men's bathroom and going, like, is the urinal that hard to hit? Like, it doesn't seem like rocket science. Could we just find the happy medium? It started up here for a 7-foot person. Now it's down here for a 2-year-old. Because we just find them. Anyway, they're wiping up urine on the floor. They're scrubbing toilets. They're doing whatever is asked to do. They're setting up mints and lotions and mouthwash and things like that in the bathrooms. All so that when we roll in the door at 8:30, when people roll in the door at 8:30, it's ready. That they're members of the tech team. And the tech team rolls in here, and they're grabbing a computer, and they're hooking it up to a projector, and they're climbing up a ladder, and they're dropping down a screen, and they're running lights, and they're listening to musicians go like, hey, could you turn my monitor up? Could you turn it down? Could you turn it up? Could you turn it down? Because they're musicians. They tend to be high maintenance. And they're doing all kinds of things so that at 8:30 they can create a positive experience. They're members of the band. Now, mind you, there's a dynamic with the band that should be pointed out. Because it's Sunday morning, their alarm's going off at 5:30, it's now 7 o'clock in the morning, they're rolling in here, and it's not a prima donna gig where it's like, hey, here's everything set up, now just stand and look beautiful. No, they're looking at an empty stage. And add to that the fact that just a couple days before, on Thursday, most of them got off work at 5 o'clock. They didn't even go home and say hi to their families or their friends or whatever. They went straight to the studio. They started eating dinner together at 5:30, and at about 10 o'clock or 9:45 that night, they get home. So they've already put in a lot of hours to create these experiences. Now it's Sunday morning at 7 o'clock in the morning. They're rolling in here. They're throwing their instruments on the table. Mind you, these are people who have jobs. See, I lack credibility because this is my job. It's not their job. They're going to run their own coaxial, or their own quarter-inch cables. They're going to run their own XLR cables. They're going to set up their own stands. They're going to set up their own iPads. They're going to do all that stuff, all so that they can create an experience for us. And about the time they get here at 7, a whole nother group of people's alarm clocks go off, and they're members of our guest services and our kids team. Because, see, they've decided that they're going to get here at about 8:30. And many of them, especially from the kids team, this is crazy, they've decided that they're going to get here at 8:30, and they're going to teach at the 9, and then they're going to stick around and they're going to attend the 11. Some of them do the opposite. They're going to attend the 9, and they're going to teach at the 11. And they walk in the door, and they occupy the kids' check-in area, and they teach new parents about the security system, and they take care of babies, and they assure them that they can leave their crying infant with them in the nursery, and that, in fact, we've got a system they can call them out of the service if they need to, and they're changing diapers, and they're feeding goldfish crackers, and they're rocking babies, and they're teaching kids, and they're creating experiences. They've got this crazy thing called Professor Blow It Up, and the council's increased our insurance because they've got, like, gunpowder and flames, and they're creating experiences for kids that cause kids to go, I don't want to go upstairs. Like, that's boring. They're leading music, and they're doing theatrics, and they're creating crafts, and they're doing games. And this isn't just like they started thinking about when they got here. For many of them, they spend their week thinking about this, no different than I might or anyone else might. They're members of the guest services team, and they're standing on the curb, and they're greeting people as they show up, not in a creepy, like, could I give you a kiss and I have coffee breath kind of way, but in this, like, we're glad you're here, but we also respect your bubble kind of way. They're sitting at Guest Central, and they're asking questions about this weird church and what exactly makes us tick. They're ushers and greeters, and they're ushers, and they're taking care of us, and they're making sure you're safe, because last service it sounded like a tank might have ran into the wall over here, and they're getting up, and they're scooting out there, and they're going, no tank, we're good. And about the time that their job is starting at 9, another set of alarm clocks is going off. And you might ask yourself, who in the world needs an alarm clock to get out of bed at 9 o'clock in the morning? The answer is my wife. She works nights, okay. Actually, the answer is people who like to go to church at 11. That's the answer. And they're too, obviously, they're members of the guest services team, that they're a member of the kids team. And they're going to do it all again, but just as fresh and for a different set of families and kids and adults. And then at about 12:15, when people run out the door to go grab lunch, to beat the lunch crowd, to give poor tips, because that's what church people do, is they give tracts, to do all that stuff, to catch the second game, to go catch the second half of the ski day, to go still get on the lake, all respectable things. Please don't misunderstand me. But as all of us are doing that, there's another crew of people that go, hey, now I'll stick around till 1. And what they're doing is they're jumping up here, and they're rolling cords, and they're carrying speakers, and they're emptying garbages, and they're mopping floors, and they're going downstairs, and they're tearing down kids' area, and they're taking dividers, because the deal is we have 45 minutes to literally get it all back in the box and leave the place better than we found it. And both of those things are high values of ours. Our goal is that when the Grand Street people walk in the door at 1 o'clock, they would go, wow, I've never not seen urine on the men's bathroom floor. Our goal, and this is not a reflection of how clean they don't keep the place because they do a good job, but our goal is that they would walk in the door and go, 1 o'clock on Sunday, the place is never in better shape than that. And so it's about tearing down and helping tear down. It's also about leaving the place better than we found it. See, if you're a guest with us this morning, this is a weird weekend. And part of what I mean by weird is, please come back and give us another chance. But if you're a guest with us, there's a couple things that I really want you to walk away from this morning, understanding about the culture of this place. One is for us, the win of Sunday morning involves our wanting to create experiences that no matter where you're at with Jesus, no matter what you believe about him, no matter what your past is, no matter what your long ago Christian uncle did to you, no matter any of those positive or negative experiences, we want to create Sunday experiences that are helpful for you no matter where you're at. Our goal is that you would walk out engaged and challenged. That you would walk out the door not persuaded, not cajoled, not manipulated, but to have a little better understanding of what Jesus brings to the table. And we respect the fact, because God respects the fact, that you got to make a decision with that. Second thing is, we want you to walk out the door. We want everyone to walk out the door. We want everyone to walk out the door with the sense that they were more respected and more loved in that 75 minutes than anywhere else they've been all week. And so see, it's not about good coffee, and it's not about no popcorn kernels on the floor, and it's not about a great kids ministry. It's not about any of that. It's not about the slides happening at the right time and the sound sounding good and the music actually being good. All of that is about respecting people and respecting God. Because I think it's dishonoring to God when there's garbage on the floor. And I think it's dishonoring to our guests. Have you ever noticed how much differently you take care of your house when there's someone coming over that's never been there? So we work hard at creating a space that pretends like we're going to have guests because we are going to have guests. And for those of you that, this is home for you, this morning is not about manipulation. And some of you are already going wow, we were duped. We were told it was a big deal this weekend, and it's just a sales pitch. It's not like that. My goal this morning for those of you that this is home, it's not a shame thing. It's not a guilt thing. I mean this very sincerely. Our goal is to inspire you to join us in creating experiences that are helpful for people. Listen, church is about way more than Sunday morning. We'll be the first to say that. But most people here who follow Jesus would say Sunday morning or some version of it played an integral role in their following Jesus. I have meetings with people on a monthly basis, and the story is predictable. I hid in the back row of the balcony, how you doing? For about a year. And I say, I'm so sorry. It just happened to me a few weeks ago. I'm so sorry. You've been coming here since Christmas. I'm sorry I haven't met you yet. No. We didn't want to meet you. Thank you for creating a space that's excellent and that we can hide in. That's the deal. There was a story in the paper recently, maybe you remember it, about a particular statue on Whitefish Mountain in Whitefish. Remember that there's this Jesus statue, and there was a whole bunch of debate about whether or not it should be there, and they were being sued about having a Jesus statue up there. And you need to know, I'm not trying to make political comment one way or the other on that. I feel like part of my job requires that I don't make political comments. But a friend texted me in response to the fact that most recently a judge found that, in fact, these people have the right to have a Jesus statue on their ski mountain. And in his text, you could pick up on the wit and the cynicism to a degree, because what he was saying was, who are they to tell these people they can't have a Jesus statue on their mountain? And then he caught himself, and he said, I guess, and speaking of the people who wanted the statue down, he said, I guess they've never been to the Grand Street Theater in Helena, Montana on a Sunday morning. Now, I don't say that to brag. I hope you know that. I say that to say, there's a guy who gets it. That part of the goal here is to create experiences that people find engaging, challenging, helpful. And part of the goal of this morning is to kind of pull back the curtain a little bit so that we could better appreciate all the work that goes into that. And by the work, I don't mean the staff. Part of the goal is to inspire you to become a part of that. At one point in Jesus' life, he was walking. Some of you are going, does he read the Bible at this church? To which the answer is, not as much this weekend, but come back in 2 weeks and we'll just Bible the heck out of you. One day Jesus is walking, and he's headed for the Galilee, and this is a point in his life where he's in the mode of calling disciples to himself, and he happens upon this guy. His name is Philip, and he says to Philip, "Hey, Philip, you should come follow me." Now, sometimes when we read that in the text, we go like, "Oh, wow, that's crazy." Like, I think the context suggests, and especially the historical context, that these are guys that they knew each other, they had relationship, they were familiar with each other. Philip knew there was this rabbi named Jesus, so Jesus says, "Hey, you should come follow me." And the other important part of the context is that oftentimes, especially if you were raised in the church, we read that and we think like, Philip had all this sacrifice, like, okay, I'll follow you, Jesus. Like, okay, that's like kind of the way we talk about it. Like, oh, okay, all this stuff I got to lay aside. Okay, I'll do that. Not the case in that day. Because in that day, to be a Talmudim, to be a disciple of a rabbi, that was like making it to the NBA. That was like getting a full ride to Stanford. That was the best of the best of the best. And so generally speaking, we can count on the fact that if a rabbi said to someone, "Hey, come follow me," he's going like, "Really? Like I made varsity? Like you really think I can do that?" And the fact that Philip was in this position at this stage in life tells us that in all likelihood, he'd been passed up by other rabbis. Other rabbis had said, "Nah, you were pretty good in 8th grade, but not going to get past the JV team in high school. Nah, you're pretty smart, but you're not Harvard material. Yeah, I mean, you scored a touchdown in high school, but you're not NFL material." And so when Jesus says to him, like, "Hey, come follow me," it's a vote of confidence. He's saying, "Hey, I think you can become like me. Like, come on, come walk with me." And so Philip, I think with a high level of elation went like, "Oh, sweet, great." And he said to Jesus something I think we could all relate to as we were about ready to commit to a foreign experience. He said, "Hey, can I bring a friend?" She says, "Yeah, go get a friend." And so Philip takes off and he runs into his buddy Nathaniel. And he says, "Hey, Nathaniel, we found the rabbi, we found the Messiah. And he's like, slow down, too much caffeine. "Who is he?" And he says, "His name's Jesus, and he's from Butte." And Nate says, "Butte? Like, I've never known anybody from Butte that I wanted to talk to." No offense to those of you Butte people. Actually, what he says is, "Nazareth? Can anything good come from Butte? Like, give me a break." And I love Philip's response because it is so candid, and yet, we'll just let him speak for himself. He says, "Hey, come and see." Not like, "Hey, he's got all the answers. Let me just overwhelm you. Hey, here's 10 books." I was talking to someone recently who like started following Jesus. And she's like, and the next day there were like 15 books that showed up on my doorstep. Like these well-intentioned, like, "Here's all this information, all your questions answered." Like, blah. None of that. Just come see. See, I think when the church is hitting on all cylinders, and that's not to suggest that we are, but that part of our commission from God is to create come and see experiences. You know, in the New Testament, Paul frequently refers to the church as the body of Christ. One instance of that is in 1 Corinthians, and he says, "Now you're the body of Christ, and each one of you is part of it." And we make much about that, but have you ever considered that in the real world, to say that someone's the body of Christ, to say someone's the body of someone, is to say that it seems like, let me get into this question or this suggestion, that what Paul is suggesting is that now that Jesus has died and rose, now the closest you can get to Jesus is to be close to the body. And this grates against those of us who love our quiet times and our prayer times and our individualized Christianity, and we forget the fact that people didn't even own Bibles until very recently. That for the most part of Christian history, it was not an individualized American consumer experience, it was a communal one. I was hanging out with a friend a couple weeks ago, and he has these 2 siblings that Teresa and I get to spend time with just occasionally. They're probably in their 40s or 50s, and they are hilarious. Like, they are the funniest 2 people, and it's the type of people, you have this when you hang out with them, that you just wish they would never stop talking and you could just be a fly on the wall and just laugh. And they're so witty and so quick that most of the time I'm just like I didn't even get it until 5 minutes later, those people. And so I was explaining to my friend, like, they are so funny. In fact, it might have been my wife who brought it up. And my friend said, "Oh man, like that's my mom." See, his mom died, 15 years ago, and he said, and we've never met his mom. And he said, "But like that's my mom. When you hang out with those 2, what you're experiencing is my mom." See, that's what Paul is saying when he says the church is the body of Christ. Like, he's gone. You want to know him? Well, the best you can know him, the closest you can get to his physical presence now is to be with his body, the church. And don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting that this constitutes the sum total of what it means to be the church. But that the church is charged to create these come and see experiences, not where everyone's answers are instantly provided, not where everyone's problems instantly go away, but these real, dynamic experiences where people go like, Jesus was there. Like that's as close as I get to him. I think our job as a church that wants to matter in Helena, that wants to be the one that exists for the benefit of its non-members, I think our job as people trying to follow Jesus and be part of the church is to create experiences that your friends would come and they'd go, yeah, that was good. It was challenging. I don't agree. Not yet anyway, but yeah. Chick-fil-A. Remember Chick-fil-A? Do you know Chick-fil-A? The funny commercials, right? Well, we've got one for you, and then I'll tell you a story. This is just nothing but shameless bragging, but our friend Brian Manley, who lives in Atlanta, who does a lot of our art stuff, he does a lot of their stuff. Just saying. Anyway, I heard a podcast recently about a person who was on the board of directors at Chick-fil-A in a real strategic time in their history. It was the early 90s. And do you remember, if you're a football fan in particular, do you remember in the 90s when like the Boston Market commercials wouldn't go away? And it was like, we don't even have Boston Market. Why all these, anybody with me? So in the early 90s, Boston Market was this up-and-coming company that decided they were going to kind of push through to the next stratosphere of businessdom. And they were leveraging all kinds of debt, and they were making all kinds of noise about the fact that by the year 2000, they were going to pass $1 billion in sales. Really, their goal was to knock Chick-fil-A, which is hard for us to appreciate, but in the East and the South, they're a very big deal, to kind of knock Chick-fil-A off their pedestal. And in that time, the board of directors for Chick-fil-A, they got together to have a conversation about, like, what are we going to do? And it was in this room, and it was all the smart, kind of uppity, powerful people, and there was this long dialogue, and the general consensus, though heated and very stressed out, was we got to get bigger. Like, we've got to respond to this. We need to leverage debt. We need to expand our stores. We need to do some things. We need to increase our production. We've got to match this, or else they're going to win just by sheer attention. And after a couple, maybe a few hours of that, the then CEO, a guy by the name of, I believe, Truett Cathy, he beat the table with his fist, kind of in one of those iconic leadership moments. I'm told he's otherwise a real gentle, kind of calm guy. And having captured the attention of everybody at the table, he looked at them and said, I am sick and tired of hearing you talk about how we're going to get bigger. He said, if we are going to respond to this challenge, what we need to be talking about is not how do we get bigger, but how do we get better. And then he said something that I think was brilliant leadership, as if he needs my approval. He said, if we get better, our customers will demand that we get bigger. You know, something in the year 2000, Boston Market filed for bankruptcy, and Chick-fil-A passed $1 billion in sales. I guess the challenge this morning is to go like, let's get better. Let's get better at creating experiences. Look around. We have the opportunity to provide experiences that make Jesus as accessible as possible to as many people as possible. Early on in our existence together, people would ask me, like, Adam, how do I become a member? What do we do about membership? And we even on the council spent a lot of energy going, like, how are we going to define membership? Because some of the old ways of doing that didn't feel right, but it felt like we should probably do something, and we probably spent more energy on it than we should, and we tried to do something, and it was a flop, which is typically the case when we try to do things just because we feel like we should, not because we have vision for it. And so I've just kind of let it lie dormant for a long time. And then I was listening to a guy recently, and he made an observation that's helped me tremendously. He said, if you think about it, members have privileges. Your Costco card gives you privileges. Your gym membership, it gives you privileges. He said, my understanding of the church is that we don't have members, we have owners. Because owners have responsibilities, that they have opportunities, that they're called by God to serve their community. That thus we're calling this weekend, Calling All Owners. Had lunch recently with a gal who wanted to talk about baptism. And because we're kind of in that season. And we sat down, and this is one of those instances I've just had kind of passing highs and hellos with her, similar to many of you. And we sat down to lunch, and we barely even introduced ourselves, barely even got started. And she said, Adam, you need to understand that the only hour in my entire week that I feel peace is when I sit in the Grand Street Theater on Sunday mornings. Now, in a very real sense, part of me was instantly very excited for her, and what I said to her probably all too quickly was, I'm so excited for you to grow in your relationship with Jesus because he has so much more for you than that. And in another real sense, it was an absolute confirmation of this, of creating experiences that allow people to wrestle with Jesus and who he is, that cause them to leave feeling more respected, that cause them to leave feeling challenged and engaged, to cause them feeling a little less defensive about the faith, to allow them to recover from where they were last and the wounds that they had, to allow them to come in and not be shamed by a divorce or any of those different things, to just create experiences and let Jesus do with them what he wants to do. And so really this morning is about inviting you to join us in that, to help create those experiences. There's a card in front of you. Would you just grab it? And I know this is like church 101, like shameless sales pitching. I'm just going to ask you to trust me for about 5 more minutes. In many ways, that card that you're staring at it's a testament to how, and if you're in a back row, there's one behind you, or there's one right behind your shoulder if you want one. Even if you're a part of a team, will you grab that? Because here's how this all kind of goes full circle. Here's how this all comes together. Late June, early July, I asked the staff, and like I said, this card in many ways speaks to how hard they work. I asked them, okay guys, we need to create a card that speaks to all of your critical needs. Not like, hey, I'd like to have a hot air balloon, so if we had a hot air balloon and people, we would do that. Like, not like deep visionary stuff, like critical needs stuff. What do we need to create the experiences on a Sunday morning that we want to create? And that's what you're staring at. And the numbers next to it represent their collective, like, here's how many people that would take. As you'll see on there, in most cases, those opportunities are twice a month, and so that kind of doubles the number. It might be helpful to know that our schedules run 3 months at a time, September through November, December through February, March through May, and June through August for IM, OCD, and controlling, and so we're organized. There's the need. Listen, if you're new to this place, I think that's your best opportunity to get involved. As you're trying to understand Narrate, and I understand some of the questions, and one of them is going to be like, where's the small group? And there's nothing wrong with that question, but what's coming from that is I'd like to connect with some people. What you need to know about the culture of this place is we think the best way to connect is to find some people that you serve with. Like those guys that have set up for a year, 2 years during the kids ministry from 7:30 in the morning, or from 7 to 8:30 in the morning, like they're friends. They connect now. The band, they're friends. We think that the best means to relationship is to start with mission, to start with serving together. Otherwise, it just gets creepy, and we eat bad chicken, and we sing Kumbaya in a living room, and we don't like most of the people. So we like to just serve together. So if you're a guest, or more so if you're new, I think this is your best opportunity. If you're someone that's already a part of this, thank you. Like, sincerely. And I hope you feel a high level of ownership over stories like the 3 that I've told this morning. I hope that the coffee that you brewed, or the diapers that you changed, or the popcorn kernel that you picked up, or the sound that you ran, I hope that you get that in God's economy you're a part of a much bigger picture. And I'm aware of the fact that there's only a couple to get a microphone and a couple to get lights on them, and I just hope that you get that it's bigger than that. And for those of you that have been here for several cycles, I'm not talking to those of you that have trickled in the last even year or so, but those of you like this is going to be your 2nd or your 3rd September with us. My prayer has been that you would leave inspired. Inspired because maybe your faith has got a little boring. And you know something? Jesus predicts that. He says that the moment your faith becomes about you, you'll be bored with it. That's the way human life works, that when life becomes about ourselves, it becomes miserable very quickly. For those of you that maybe there was a time where you couldn't wait to attend a gathering at Narrate, and now you're just like, yeah, it's same old jokes, same old songs, same bad coffee, but it's not bad coffee, it's great coffee. I mean, same stuff. Maybe that sense of numbness has more to do with your lack of ownership. Maybe the way you could re-engage your faith and re-engage your excitement in this place is to contribute. And I also want you to get this, and this isn't a shame thing, this isn't any of that, but I understand the argument, like, Adam, I can't commit that far out. My schedule's crazy. I'm already busy at work, all those things, and those are all valid. And listen, if this is your first time, what you don't know is we say to people, go camping, do your thing. Like this, it's not like that. But I do think it's fair for you to know that the reason why you love the experience, and the reason why your kids love the experience, and the reason why the coffee is hot, and the carpet is clean, and the music is good, is because other people who deal with the exact same challenges and the exact same demands and the exact same hobbies, they've pre-decided for you to create an experience for you and your friends. So my challenge is this. I understand that the tendency in these contexts would be, especially in a church world, would be go like, well, thanks, Adam. I'm going to go pray about it, right? We've prayed for you. Got that one covered for you. In all seriousness, we're doing a couple kind of crazy things. The council made the decision about 2 months ago that we're not doing church next Sunday, September 1st. Don't think it'll be a pattern, not that we're avoiding Labor Day. It was born out of a few things, one of which was the fact that it was a unique season. We had a key leadership spot that was empty for a season, and that caused everybody to work a little bit harder, and it just felt like a great way to say thanks to all of our teams, kind of like we do after Christmas Eve, to just go like, thank you. Because you know what? A lot of the people on those teams are the types of people that go, well, I was going to go camping, which we want them to do, but you need someone to do sound, so yeah, I'll do that. And we just wanted to create a weekend where nobody had to do, like no one had to be the team player. We were just going to shut it down. And so we're doing that. But what part of the benefit of that becomes is next week is a work week for the staff, nonetheless. And what they've done, what I've asked them to do is clear their calendar. That all they'll do next week, if that's the only thing they can do, is meet with you, have a phone call with you, exchange emails with you, have coffee with you, have lunch with you, and talk about teaching kids, and talk about making coffee at 7:30 in the morning, and talk about ushering at the 11, whatever it is. And so my challenge to you isn't to walk out the door and go, I'll pray about it, Adam, thanks. But to actually fill it out and leave it in one of those boxes, check off a couple areas where you're interested. Listen, you're not signing up for the rest of your lives. You just give us a fake number. I'm just kidding. But it's not like that. It's a conversation. And Bridget's going to call you and go, hey, so you say you're interested in helping the kids band develop a bigger band. Like, talk to me about that. And you're going to go like, well, I said that, but I don't sing and I don't play an instrument. Okay, well, maybe you should be talking to... I mean, it's going to be a conversation. But it's one that we'd love to have with you in the next couple weeks so that come September 8th, when things kick back into gear and the numbers are high and all those things are happening again, that no one's coming going, yeah, the coffee was gone. Yeah, it was okay. Kids didn't have a very good experience. Why? Because there was one teacher and 30 kids. Yeah, it was all right, but you get what I'm saying. So join us. It's an invitation. It's a challenge. And then I'll also say this. Didn't say this last service. Say two things. One is there's a lot of empty seats at the 9, if you're annoyed with your elbow room right now. The other is this. The council has invested a lot of energy in the last several months into going like, look around. We've almost got a capacity problem. We almost don't have enough seats for all the people that want to be a part of the experience. And we know as well as anyone that's a great problem to have. And we're not sure entirely where that leads. We've chased down lots of leads and had doors shut, and we're just trusting God in that. But what it may lead to is a third service here in the not-too-distant future. But, and here's where the council did the things that I've asked them to do, and that's be like the voice of wisdom and the voice of experience. But the last time we talked about this, what they said to me was, Adam, but to do that, the staff has got to find a way to get a higher level of engagement. Because we got a lot of people who want to attend a gathering, not nearly as many who want to teach kids. And so there's that too. Like if we're going to continue to create these experiences, it's just going to require that we have a higher level of participation. And now I sound like more like a salesman, and that's not my intent. I'm just trying to like inspire you to go like, life could be bigger than you.
If you would like to engage further with Narrate Church, you can find contact information online, www.narratechurch.org. We would love to hear from you.